Again, my name is Erica Liddell, and I work at the Chief Evaluation Office at the Department of Labor, and I'm the Department of Labor lead for the TAACCCT evaluation. The purpose of this webinar is to discuss detailed evaluation plans as required in your Round 3 SGA. I'll be walking you through the technical assistance document that each emailed you last week, and it's really helpful to refer to this document during the webinar, so I encourage you to pull up your email from the TAACCCT@dell.gov with technical assistance document on detailed evaluation plans, and use that document as we're going through this webinar. We're also, this webinar is for Round 3 grantees, and we're really hoping that you've encouraged and invited your third-party evaluators to join us today as well. For some reason they weren't able to make it, we are going to be recording this. We'll be posting it on the TAACCCT community of practice. We also think that there might be some third-party evaluators that are joining us for the first time and weren't around to join us for the orientation we did on evaluation in November. And that webinar, which we recorded and posted on the TAACCCT community of practice, provides a good overview of the national evaluation. So we encourage you to check that out and share that with your third-party evaluators. So the agenda for today is first we are going to go over, give you an overview and talk about deadlines and the review process for detailed evaluation plans. And we're going to walk you through that technical assistance document that we emailed you on evaluation plans. And we're going to be discussing recommendations and tips on how to develop your detailed evaluation plan. Also, we're going to be going over some additional resources for you. And then we've actually reserved most of today's webinar for questions and answers. And we actually encourage you to, throughout the webinar, if you have questions, to go ahead and send us your questions using the chat box function at the hand of the screen. And we have about 15 to 20 minutes of a presentation, and then we'll hold, we'll put you on hold, we'll gather your questions up, and then we'll start addressing them one by one. So my name is Erica Liddell, and I'm at the Chief Evaluation Office at the U.S. Department of Labor. I'm also here today with Shane Spalding from the Urban Institute, who is the contractor for National Evaluation on TAACCCT. And she's going to be walking us through that technical assistance document. And also joining us today is Lauren Eister from the Urban Institute. So here's a quick overview of the detailed evaluation plans. Basically, Round 3 of TAACCCT requires that you retain a third-party evaluator to conduct an implementation and an outcomes and impact analysis. Your grantees, in addition to the summary evaluation plan that you were required to submit, you are required to submit a detailed evaluation plan. A detailed evaluation plan should be an expansion of the summary evaluation plans and incorporate any feedback that you got in the summary evaluation plan from the Department of Labor. Grantees rely heavily on the capacity and expertise of third-party evaluators to develop the detailed evaluation plans. So deadlines for the detailed evaluation plans are May 15th for competitive grants and June 30th for state-designated grants. Now, we did just recently send out the feedback on the summary evaluation plans to the state-designated grants, so that's why we're giving them a little bit more time to develop those detailed evaluation plans. When you are complete with your detailed evaluation plan, you want to email that to TAACCCT@dol.gov. You want to copy your FPO, and if it's a subject line TAACCCT evaluation, that'll help flag it. And as a reminder, each consortium, if you're a consortium grantee, you only need to be submitting one detailed evaluation plan. So the review process for detailed evaluation plans. These must address the required components of the evaluation, such as having an implementation study, having an impact/outcome study, and you also must present the most rigorous plan possible for evaluating the project's outcomes. And you need to include a rationale for why your evaluation design is the most rigorous. going to be reviewing all of the detailed evaluation plans, the Chief Evaluation Office, in collaboration with the Urban Institute. We are going to be providing feedback on those detailed evaluation plans. Just like we did with the summer evaluation plans, we will be making some recommendations to strengthen your detailed evaluation plans, and in some cases, we will be requiring that a revised detailed evaluation plan be submitted to the Department of Labor. Now I'm going to hand it over to Shane, who again is going to walk through that technical assistance document that we did email out recently.
Great, Erica. So the purpose of the technical assistance document is to help you in developing your detailed evaluation plans. It provides a list of recommended and required components and offers a possible structure for your detailed evaluation plans. We suggest that these plans be no more than 30 pages in length, double-spaced, and use 12-point font. Like I said, I'm going to walk you through the technical assistance document, which was recently sent to grantees, and at the end you'll have time to ask questions. So on this slide, I've listed the 4 components or the 4 column headings for the technical assistance document. The first describes the component or the element that we suggest you include in the detailed evaluation plan. Note that the numbering here does not match the SGA. The second column describes what we mean by component and we want to see in that component. In the third, we offer a reference to the SGA, so where you see a specific page reference, this is one of the required elements, and where no reference is provided, the component is recommended but not required. And in the final column, we tried to offer some additional tips on what a high-quality detailed evaluation plan will look like and some recommendations for the detailed evaluation plans. So first I'm going to talk about the first 3 sections of the technical assistance document. These first 3 sections really are about providing some context for your detailed evaluation plan, and it'll really help frame your detailed plan and provide an overview of the evaluation design. So we ask that you include a table of contents with page numbers. This will really make it easier for the reviewers to review your plans, and an introduction that provides a summary of what the evaluation will try to achieve and its goals. I also suggest that you include a description of the intervention to be evaluated. It's really helpful to have that information as part of the detailed evaluation plan. There's an evidence base for the model that the grantee is using. It's helpful to talk about what that evidence base is. And then we want to know about all of the components of the intervention and what will be evaluated. In this next slide, I'm going to talk about the implementation analysis, one of the required components of the evaluation. So here in section 4, we talk about the implementation analysis design. A description of this required component can be found in the SGA on pages 60 to 61. So in this section, we want to know how the third-party evaluator will analyze the steps taken by the institution or the grantee to run the program and the strengths and weaknesses of the project. I also recommend that the detailed plan include a conceptual framework which strengthen the evaluation design, and by that I mean a logic model. For example, a logic model that uses a theory of change would be a conceptual framework for the implementation analysis. We recommend that the evaluation examine fidelity to the model and examine why changes may have been made during implementation. You know, it's okay that changes are made during implementation, but we want to document those and understand them. And also we suggest that evaluators think about, when changes are made, think about the timing of the impact analysis, making sure that you are examining a program sort of in its static state. In the next section on the implementation analysis, section 4A, We talk about we ask for the implementation analysis research questions. There's a long list of the required questions in the SGA, and so you've got to make sure to address these, but there might be others that you want to include as part of the evaluation design. Section 4B, this references the data strategies for the implementation analysis. So what are the sources of data? How will they be collected? We recommend that the interviews with staff and stakeholders be part of your data collection plan, but methods could include surveys, focus groups, document review as appropriate. Next, I'm going to talk about the plan for the outcomes impact analysis. This is also a required component of the evaluation. And we suggest, as part of the design, you include a plan for rigorously evaluating the program and also a complete description of the study methodology. So in your proposals and the summary evaluation plans, you had about 5 pages, and here giving you a little bit more room to really describe the evaluation plan and include all the details that we would need to understand the selected approach. It's also possible that you may have new information or plans have changed slightly since you submitted your summary evaluation plan, and this gives you the opportunity to reflect any changes or new information. So note that only impact analyses with carefully designed comparison groups can be used to assess the effectiveness of programs. So you should see, if you look at the SGA, you can see Appendix 1, and that provides a framework of evaluation methodologies. What your approach is, it's important to provide a rationale for that approach. You should talk about the implications of small sample sizes or the difficulty in identifying appropriate comparison groups, and I'm going to talk about a little later when we talk about limitations. On the next slide, on slide 12, we're here still talking about the outcomes and impact analysis. It's recommended that the plan lay out the research questions that will guide the outcomes or impact analysis. The plan also identify the outcomes that will be analyzed. Make sure to collect data on all the required outcomes, but other outcomes can also be included as part of your evaluation design. Only an outcomes analysis will be conducted. It's important that grantees provide a justification for this approach and also offer context or a way of benchmarking outcomes for the study. On the slide, section by C, we discussed, we provide guidance and for those of you who are planning an experimental design. So the SGA provides detailed guidance about what must be included, and that should include details on how the grantee will recruit enough applicants for the program, how the third-party evaluator will implement and monitor random assignment. Next section, 5D, this is for grantees that are proposing a non-experimental design. So it is important that the detailed evaluation plan provide detailed information on the treatment and comparison groups. We want to know why the comparison groups were selected, why the evaluator feels that these are the best available comparison groups. We also want to know information on sample sizes, so how many people are in the treatment group, how many people are in the comparison groups. It is recommended that the third-party evaluators use a power analysis to determine appropriate sample sizes to be able to detect effects. Power analysis could also be used in an experimental evaluation design. in the SGA references matching variables and the importance of matching variables. We suggest including as many variables as possible. So not only demographic information, but pre-program earnings and employment can be really helpful. And also, if you're able to collect any variables that get at motivation, that can be an important variable to include in your design. In this section, 5E, we talk about the data collection and analysis. So we want to know in the detailed plans about your data collection methods and sources. If possible, data on employment outcomes should come from state administrative data, for example, UI wage record data. And if you plan to do that, you should definitely be putting those processes in place. Sometimes it can take a while to set up. In the final section, there's a few other components that we suggest you include in detailed evaluation plans. As I mentioned earlier, it's really helpful if you can talk about what some of the limitations are for the study. It's understood that they may encounter limitations in the development of the evaluation designs, and really for us to assess whether the proposed design is the most rigorous for evaluating the program, it's useful to understand those limitations. They also, here in online, in we talk about reporting, and the SGA has specific reporting requirements, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. For the evaluation, there are interim and final reports that were required. I just want to mention that these reports will be used to inform the national evaluation. So we'll be looking at those reports to really an evaluation of the initiative as a whole. Grantees are also required to do quarterly reporting, and I just wanted to mention this isn't a requirement, but third-party evaluators can be asked to help with this part of the reporting. And it's always helpful if there are references that you use in detailed evaluation plan to include references. So this is a lot of information, and so we just wanted to point you to some resources that are available to help as you develop the detailed evaluation plans. We've set a SharePoint website, and it offers a number of different resources for the evaluation. We have a number of publications up there. For example, we have publications on how and when to do propensity score matching. I know a number of you have plans to use propensity score matching. We have recorded webinars up on the site. So we did a webinar recently on using a power analysis to determine appropriate sample sizes for detecting effects, and that is available up on the SharePoint site. I also had roundtables that we've offered for third-party evaluators to really talk together and share some of the challenges that they're facing or their approaches to the evaluation, and so those are up on the site. We recently held one on how to use the evaluation to provide formative feedback to grantees. So these are some of the examples of the resources that you can access. You can get access to the site by sending an email to TAACCT@urban.org, and again, TAACCT@urban.org. So we're happy to provide you with those resources. I turn it back over to Erica, who's going to lead us through the questions.
Sure. So thanks so much, Shane. And I know that was a lot of information, so we're anxious to address your questions. I also just want to mention that we are also joined by Tom Hooper from the Employment Administration, who's also going to help address our questions as well. Okay, so I'm going to put you on hold for a second as we go through your questions, and then we will be right back. Questions coming in, and we'll try to address all of them. So the first question is, where can we find the PowerPoint posted? So we are recording today's webinar, and we are going to be posting the PowerPoint on the TAACCCT Community of Practice. There's an evaluation section on there. You also, if you're interested, and I encourage you to email eval@urban.org. There will be the other resources that we mentioned will be there. You'll be able to find the November webinar that I mentioned earlier that has the introduction to the national evaluation, that talks about the national evaluation activities, and that will be that's posted on the TAACCCT Community of Practice as well. Okay, so the next question is, could you clarify, should grantees have received the document you are reviewing in these slides, or just the evaluators? Is it available to access online? That's a really good question. So we emailed the technical assistance document on detailed evaluation plans to all grantees. So if for some reason you have not seen it, I would definitely get in touch with your FPO. The FPOs all have copies of this as well. And we highly encourage you to forward on that technical assistance document to your third-party evaluators so that they can have this as they're helping you develop the detailed evaluation plans. And the next question is there a sample evaluation plan for review, maybe for another project? That's a really great question. What we'll do is we will look to the previous rounds. We'll contact some of the round one grantees that, even though they weren't required, some of them are doing third-party evaluations. And so we'll contact them and see if they would be willing to post evaluation plans on the SharePoint site. So be looking for more information about that. But that's a really great question. Round two grantees, we will get in touch with them, but we're not sure if they'll have any interim reports yet to share, or they weren't actually the detailed evaluation plan. This is the first time we were requiring you to send that to us. So we'll get some similar products from previous rounds. Do you have let's see. Can you find intervention? We find the question, what part of intervention will be evaluated, confusing? Shouldn't we evaluate? Should evaluate all aspects? Yes. So that's a good question. So what we mean, by the third-party evaluators, what we're expecting you to do is, so basically the TAACCCT grants are capacity building grants that you're using to fund the capacity building. The grants are using them to fund the capacity building of different potential programs in their community college. And then there are participants that then are adapting to and experiencing these curriculums. And so what we see third-party evaluators doing is actually being on the ground and trying to see if there are impacts in these participants that are benefiting from the capacity building of the TAACCCT grants. So intervention, we expect that you do an implementation study looking at the process of how they've taken this TAACCCT funding and built the capacity of these programs and documenting that process. But they also expect you to do impact or outcomes analysis looking at the participants that have been touched by these TAACCCT grants. By intervention, we mean the capacity building of the TAACCCT grantee as well as the participants that have been touched by this capacity building effort. Okay, Lauren is going to handle the next question.
Sure. So I'm not going to read the whole question here, but there was a question about looking at outcomes when there's just a treatment and not a potential, it seems like not a potential comparison group. And the first part of the question is about which outcome measures to use for the evaluation plan. And first you should really look at the SGA. There are information there on outcomes that are really important for the TAACCCT, but that also in the technical assistance document, we mentioned that there might be other outcomes that might be really relevant to what trying to accomplish, and it would be appropriate to include additional outcomes of interest. And this is for the evaluation. I want to make sure I'm not confusing this with some of the work that the grantees must do in their reporting to the Department of Labor. And just the second part of this is it looks like there might not be an obvious comparison group that the evaluator may have, and I really encourage you to think about how to put those outcomes that you measure into context, because you really need to know and want to be able to share how well you think the program and the overall grant might be doing relative to something. It might not be a perfect comparison. You might not have something that you could use propensity score matching with and really do impact estimates, but we really do feel it's important to try to benchmark what your grant has accomplished in a way that sets it in the larger field. So, if you can try to do that, I think that would really be helpful and make your evaluation quite useful.
This is an interesting question that came in on finding a participant. So there are differences. Working on your performance management for your grant, it's a little different than how you would handle the evaluation. So when you're doing performance reporting for the grant, you definitely want to, figure out a way that you are measuring and counting all the participants that are directly being touched by the building as a result of your TAACCCT grant. Evaluation is a little different, and, like for example, if you're using a comparison group, your participants might be someone that are taking a new course that was developed as a result of the TAACCCT grant, but then you would have a comparison group but also be including and reporting up on and doing analysis that aren't taking the course as a comparison. So you would have participants and non-participants both reported on in the evaluation and as a part of the analysis, but that's for the evaluation. So, that's just one example of what a comparison group might consist of. So I think that's really specific to your particular evaluation design. It's just very important not to mix up the evaluation and the way that you're counting folks for the evaluation and then the performance reporting that you're doing for DOL as a grantee.
This question we have says, what are your suggestions for accessing employment and wage records? Our EDD cannot provide us with individual student-level data, but can only provide aggregate group data. So we know this is a challenge in some states, and we appreciate your efforts to try to access those data. There may be other ways that you can get information on student outcomes. You can involving staff is one way. If you have the resources, there's always the option of surveying students. So these are some of the alternatives for those of you that have a constraint in terms of accessing the wage record data.
So that's a great example of, as you're developing your detailed evaluation plan, you might not have all of these kinks worked out, and that might be a limitation that you discuss in your detailed evaluation plan. Today, what we're really focusing on is what's required and our expectations of what you include in your detailed evaluation plan. These are questions that are related to your specific situations. We'll try to address them, but just keep in mind that you don't expect you to have everything maybe, figured out, but we would like to hear about your plans of what data you plan to access, and then you could discuss the limitations in your detailed evaluation plan. In the future, and as a part of the November webinar where we discussed the national evaluation activities, we did talk about how we will be bringing together, and she mentioned earlier some virtual roundtables and webinars we've done with previous rounds. We are going to be bringing your round to get round 3 third-party evaluators together as well to do some virtual roundtables and webinars with you. We haven't launched that yet. The first thing we want to do is get a sense of where you are in your evaluation design plans, take a look at these detailed evaluation plans, then we'll be begin to develop topics of interest for your rounds and do some virtual webinars and virtual roundtables and webinars that are specific for your round. So these are topics that we'll definitely keep note of that is interest in getting access to education data and these outcomes questions. So I did want to mention that. So,
and
yeah.
This is another thought on the data pieces. If you have a relationship or a working relationship of some kind with your local workforce investment boards, they may be another good resource to explore to seeing how they can access data in some way or help with the surveying and working with participants.
Okay.
Pretty question.
Yeah, sorry, we're just going
Sure.
through the questions.
So we've got a question from an evaluator about a small sample size and no access to case level data, I think individual level data, and using a cohort analysis approach with pre-post measures, and asking about how would you suggest benchmarking. And just, I think pre-post does allow you to do some kind of benchmarking of what the cohorts were able to do before compared to after. So that's very helpful. But you might want to think about these cohorts and looking at other contexts, as the person says in this question, within the state, within the college, other programs that are doing something similar or in a similar industry or serving similar kinds of students, and seeing how well these students are doing compared to those. So I think it is about being creative here and thinking about the appropriate within context and for your TAACCCT grant and what you're studying.
Yeah, and I would just say, generally speaking, that we understand that there are a lot of challenges to doing evaluations in the realm of TAACCCT. And so in this evaluation plan, what we're looking for is your rationale for your evaluation plan, including a discussion of, limitations you have and the realities of what you're seeing on the ground. And so what does a feasible evaluation plan look like? Okay, I have a question about one of the grantees submitted a summary evaluation plan in their original statement of work. Later, they submitted a stronger evaluation plan in the FW mod, trying to figure out which summary evaluation plan the feedback that the Department of Labor provided addressing. So this is actually a really good question. I would actually ask that if you would not mind, re-forwarding that new evaluation plan so that our team, the evaluation team, can make sure that we do have a copy of that and of new evaluation plan that you submitted. And then we can take a look at it and let you know specifically which one we were able to review and provided you feedback with. So if you can send an email to TAACCCT@duke.gov and address it to Erica Lillydahl and include a copy of that new evaluation summary plan, I'd really appreciate it. And then we can answer your question better. Okay. On website, will this recording be available? So it's the TAACCCT Community of Practice.
We'll follow up after this with the link.
Okay, so that was Tom Hooper. So it sounds like we'll be able to, maybe what we'll do is resend out a link to that, and then we'll let you know, of course, that we'll make sure that the technical assistance document is up there, as well as the recording and PowerPoint of this webinar today.
So a question about component 4, which was regarding the implementation analysis design, and the question is, what is meant by interfere? And the third bullet says how the third-party evaluator will suggest how implementation might be strengthened with appropriate timing so as not to interfere with the impact outcomes analysis. We just mean that if the grantee is making major changes to the program in the middle of the impact or the outcomes analysis, that can make it difficult to figure out what's going on with the program if there's a big change, and to really understand the effects of the program. So thinking about the timing of that formative feedback and then also the timing of the impact analysis, I think is important.
So the question is there a specified format for the interim and final evaluation report, or will there be guidance provided later? That's actually a really great question. So for the interim report, we see that including your final evaluation design as well as any early findings, or basically a status report on where you are with the evaluation. And we were actually just discussing recently that we will be coming out with a similar document I did for the detailed evaluation plans for the final evaluation report, because as Shane mentioned earlier, these reports are really important. We really value the work that you're doing, and not only because it's contributing to the field and learnings about TAACCCT, but at the national evaluation level, we're going to be reviewing your evaluation reports with a fine-tooth comb and just taking all the information in and using that to inform the findings of the national evaluation. So we are interested in helping guidance to you, our technical assistance on what the final evaluation report should include, which will mirror and look similar to the technical assistance that we're providing on the evaluation design. It's just that obviously it would be more relevant to you including your analysis and your findings.
Here's a question in kind of a similar.
Next question, I'm a little confused by it, but I'll answer it the way that I answered the two meanings that I think it might have. So it says, you mentioned formative feedback. Can we move forward before the due date and get some feedback? So I think it might be confusing two things, but basically when we're talking about formative feedback, we're talking about you, the third-party evaluators, having the grantee as you're developing an evaluation design, look at the fidelity of the model that was planned versus what was implemented, providing grantees with form feedback to inform program improvement. And then in the question earlier about interfering, we were saying that you should make sure that the timing of that doesn't interfere with the impact or outcome analysis. I think maybe you were talking about the feedback the Department of Labor is going to give. So just to recap, we're going to be getting all of your evaluation design plans, and then the Chief Evaluation Office, in collaboration with Urban, is going to be reviewing all of the evaluation design plans. I'm going to be providing you feedback as quickly as possible, and then, we are, just as we did with the summary evaluation plans, we're going to be providing you with some feedback or recommended changes, and then in some cases, if they are strong concerns or a lot of recommendations, we are going to be asking you to submit a revised evaluation design for review. So answers question.
We have a question here on who evaluators should be tracking, which participants should they be tracking, and which programs of study that are being developed and the capacity is being built for. And again, this is very different from what, or it may have overlap, of course, with what the reporting on participants for the performance piece that gets submitted to the Department of Labor. But for evaluation, you need to think through what outcomes you want to measure and what impacts you also want to measure, and the data and the comparison groups you might have available to do a good job on that. So really, think through what you're evaluating, the intervention that's being tested, and think through then how to best track those participants. There are a lot of different data sources you might want to consider, and there are some resources on the SharePoint that can help you guide you.
So someone asked a question about if we are going to be discussing the scorecards, and I just want to mention that that is separate from the evaluation, and so Department of Labor will be, we will be issuing some additional technical assistance or information about what we're expecting with the scorecards later, but that was a part of the round 3, but that's actually not a part of the national evaluation team and the work that we're doing, so we aren't going to be discussing that today. Okay, this question is, how detailed is a detailed evaluation plan? They say they could give a comparison group strategy, but they don't think they'll be ready with a precise list of participant programs and their corresponding comparison groups. So we would actually like you to be as detailed as possible. Like, we would like you to get into sizes and who the comparison groups will be. I guess we would hope that, we realize that the plan of your third-party evaluator might not be might work out the best, but we really do want to get as much information as possible, and including what we've outlined in this technical assistance document. So if you can be as specific as possible, we'd really appreciate it. If there are limitations or things that you haven't been able to work out, we at least ask that you talk through that and, include, what next steps are and when you think you'll be able to work through that.
A question here about the implementation analysis. It says, will there need to be a summative statement on the operational strengths and weaknesses of the project, or is only part of the implementation analysis? And I think as much as you can sort of bring together, there's a plan to sort of bring together what your findings are from the outcomes or impact study and implementation analysis, you should try to do so.
A few folks have just the questions about small sample size, and of course, that, again, I think we've covered, but I just want to acknowledge some of the questions that have come up. Just you really have to consider what's feasible. If you've got a really small sample size, propensity score matching probably isn't going to be your strategy. But to look at the resources on SharePoint, look at others in the field that have done some similar work, and really be able to think about what makes sense for your evaluation, considering a smaller sample size.
So this question is related to if third-party evaluators should wait to start their work until TAACCCT get feedback from the Department of Labor on the detailed evaluation designs. And actually, no, we would we do not need to wait to get feedback from us. If we have approved, a grantee would know this, if we have approved to begin work, so every grantee is able to spend money in the evaluation budget of their grant on developing a detailed evaluation plan. And a large number of grants have been approved to actually also spend on implementing the evaluation. If some grants, though, we are waiting until we get the evaluation plan to review that before you can begin the work on implementing your evaluation plan. So if you have any questions about which camp you're in, definitely contact your FEO or they can, work with us if they need you to clarify that. But I guess it just depends if your summary evaluation plan was approved or not, or if you're on your detailed evaluation plan to be approved. But all grants can spend money, their grant money, on they put aside for evaluation on helping develop the detailed evaluation plan.
One just additional piece to go back to the question about performance scorecards, just to build off Erica's point.
Yeah.
So there was a question about information regarding the performance scorecards. So he should definitely not hold off on doing work on the performance scorecards. There may be additional information about those scorecards coming out at some point, but at this point, we haven't planned anything specific. So please follow what's in the SGA about the scorecards and work on those. There's some detailed information in there, so definitely continue working on those scorecards as you've been planning on doing.
Okay, I have run out of questions, so if you have any other questions, feel free to send them in. We also have put up on the screen, this is sort of a list of, it summarizes all of the components of a detailed evaluation plan. The technical assistance document that we sent out walks you through each of these sections, and as you saw when Jen was walking through each of them, it describes where SGA you can reference to find out, or listed back to the SGA of how it tied to the requirements in the SGA, and then included the recommendations and tips from us. So I think I'm going to hold tight to see if we have any more questions come in. It is 2:03, and I know everyone's time is valuable, so we'll wait out a little bit longer. We had one more question come in, and it's, do we need to evaluate the implementation of the scorecard from an organizational perspective? So the evaluation, the third-party evaluators, the requirements related to that are an implementation of the capacity building as it relates to TAACCCT. So we aren't putting any requirements in about the implementation of the scorecard. Now, I mean, if you wanted to do that, of course, that would be fine, but not as a part of the TAACCCT grant. It's related to the TAACCCT grant.
I also just wanted to remind people to email us to get on the SharePoint site so you can access the additional resources that we have.
Yeah, why don't we put that email back up? There we go.
So it is, again, it's tacceval@urban.org, and so if you send an email to us, we will make sure you get signed up to access the SharePoint site. Now, the webinar, today's webinar will be on the Community of Practice website. We'll send that out.
Yeah, anything related to requirements for your grants, you can find on the TAACCCT Community of Practice, and the SharePoint site should be more seen as like additional resources for third-party evaluators and grantees, third-party evaluators, anyone working on the evaluation related to TAACCCT can join the SharePoint site.
We'll be happy to send out, as a follow-up to this, the URL for the TAC community and make sure that the relevant resources are posted on that.
Yes, definitely. Okay, well, we're so sorry that we got started late and had some technical assistance issues, but we really appreciate you staying with us. There's lots of folks on, and so certainly if you think of other questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to address those. Thank you so much for your time, and we're just really pleased to see how many people are able to participate and attend today.